So just knowing that a concussion can manifest in so many different ways, because I just listed basically 7 different systems that can be disrupted. If you think of all the different presentations, what you're feeling, you're not crazy. So even just acknowledging that, yes, okay, something is off. I know that something is off, and then having someone assess it.
There is always hope, and you are not alone.
Welcome to Hope Survives, a podcast from the Hope Survives nonprofit supporting individuals and families navigating life with brain injury. I'm your host, Cristabelle Braden. After my own experience with traumatic brain injury, including multiple re-injuries, I've learned how isolating this road can feel and how hard it can be to find a way forward. No one should have to walk it alone. On this show, we explore the realities of life with brain injury through encouragement, thoughtful conversations, expert insights, and real stories. No matter where you are on your journey, remember, you're never alone, and hope survives.
With a little hope, you can make it through today. With a little faith, someday you'll get through the pain. Just a little love is enough to light the way through your darkest night. Hope survives, a little faith, a little love. Hope survives, a little faith, hope survives.
Hey friends, welcome back to Hope Survives podcast. Today we are talking all about concussions. Yes, the invisible brain injury that is so frustrating for so many people. We're going to be peeling back the layers and talking about concussion phenotypes, which is kind of a fancy word meaning the different types of concussions and how the different symptoms might present. So if you've ever wondered, I want to understand concussion better, or what kind of concussion might I have, or combination of kinds, we're going to break it down for you today with Dr. Melissa Biscardi. That is right. Melissa Biscardi is back, and she has gotten her PhD since the last time she was here. We are so excited to have her back here at the podcast. She's going to deep dive into concussion phenotypes and treating concussion, which is her specialty. And I'm just so pumped. But before we get into that conversation, we have a spotlight with Dr. Jeremy Schmoe from the Functional Neurology Center talking about treating concussion. So let's give it over to Dr. Schmoe.
For concussion rehabilitation, we really need to know what systems are actually effective, because that will determine the types of therapeutics that make the most sense. What I see works the best is where we're working all the systems together to get things to fire better in terms of function. So if you're doing a cognitive task, why don't we combine that with doing some sort of body-based movement? If you're doing vestibular and visual training, why don't we balance that out with doing something proprioceptive? So getting all the systems to link and fire together, that's what's going to build the most plasticity in the brain. And we need to be really specific with what systems are off, whether it truly is a neurovisual processing issue. It could be an issue actually with the visual information actually going back into the brain. You can actually have what's called a P100 delay, where there's a delay in the visual processing of the information going back, how it hits the midbrain and loops back into that posterior part of the cortex. So if you're doing all this visual training and everything's delayed, that could be a problem. We might need to make sure that you're seeing a very good neurooptometrist. You might need Prism. Some people don't, some people do, to make sure that the information visually coming in is making sense for the brain. And then we need to look at the vestibular system. With vestibular, we really need to know whether this is more of an autolytic issue. So do you know if you're tilting, translating, rolling, or moving in different directions? Or do you truly feel like there's some sort of rotational aspect problem with your injury? With concussion, you can get a little bit of a mismatch in those systems. And there's different strategies that work specifically for that. We need to know if it's more of an executive frontal cortical network problem. And there's different exercises that you can do. ranging from virtual reality to doing TMS, or we use transcranial direct current stimulation in our office. We use low-level light therapy. We stimulate that frontal cortex. And we might be stacking therapies where we're doing 2 or 3 things at a time to develop basically temporal summation, where we're doing multiple things at the same time, and that'll drive the brain. So for us, doing functional neurology or physical therapists that are integrating and doing neuro-rehabilitation or neurooptometry that are looking more neurovisual processing and information, everybody's thinking this way now. What's the phenotype of this concussion? Is it autonomic? Is it hormonal? Is it visual? Is it vestibular? All right. Is it sleep and anxiety, depression? These are all the factors. You can do assessment forms. You can try and figure that out. But if you just talk with a person and look at their symptoms and get a really good history and then do some diagnostics, you can usually figure out all the little pieces of the puzzle. And then we need to develop a rehab strategy that looks at everything to get you going into that right direction. I like to use different apps. One of them, my friend Melissa, PhD from Canada, developed something called Brain Toolkit app. It's $18. I recommend it for my patients. And then we get very specific with your at-home exercises. We have a program from Iceland. It's called Neck Care, where we can give you at-home training that involves doing like neck proprioception. We use another program that's all like neurovisual processing. It's from Denmark, where you can actually do all this stuff at home. So we see people over a short period of time, but that doesn't mean that your brain gets fixed in 5 days. You can make lots of progress and make improvements. You can figure all these things out, but we still need to develop strategies of at-home care that makes sense for your concussion symptoms and phenotype of what it is, and make sure that you don't miss anything. Make sure that you don't have your cortisol isn't flatline. Make sure that you're not anemic. Make sure that you didn't go into a hypothyroid state after your brain injury. Looking at hormones, looking at inflammation, looking at the gut, all of those things are important to make sure that we're not missing anything with individuals.
Thank you, Dr. Schmoe, for sharing that. We love our spotlights from the FNC, and there's just so much rich knowledge there, and we're so grateful for the FNC's sponsorship of Hope Survives as a nonprofit and their support of our programs and of this podcast. The FNC offers personalized neuro recovery programs for anyone going through brain injury and a wide range of neurological conditions. When you trust your brain to the team at the Functional Neurology Center, they take the time to get to know the whole you so they can personalize your recovery program for your unique and complex condition. There's hope for a better tomorrow, and the FNC is committed to helping you get back what matters most. Visit thefnc.com for more, and we are so grateful for that. So we're going to continue talking about concussions and how they are treated. So I want to share a little bit more background on Dr. Melissa Biscardi. And I believe the day that we recorded this interview was the day she submitted her PhD dissertation. It was a few months ago now before this podcast airs. So we are just very grateful and excited to share that. So Dr. Melissa Biscardi is a concussion clinician, educator, researcher, and tech innovator specializing in personalized concussion rehabilitation. As a registered nurse and osteopathic practitioner, Melissa combines clinical expertise with research-driven care to bridge the gap between neuroscience rehabilitation and real-world recovery. She's the founder of Concussion Rehab in Toronto, Canada, where her team delivers individualized, evidence-informed concussion treatment, integrating vestibular, oculomotor, my speech doesn't want to say that word today, autonomic and cognitive rehabilitation approaches. Melissa's research focused on translating emerging neuroscience into practical rehabilitation strategies, with particular interest in visual and ocular motor dysfunction, sex differences after concussion, and technology-assisted rehabilitation. She recently completed her PhD, where her work explored novel approaches to concussion rehabilitation and recovery. Passionate about making neuro-rehabilitation more accessible, Melissa developed the Brain Toolkit app for Android and iOS, designed to support concussion assessment and rehabilitation delivery. She's published multiple research articles and book chapters and regularly presents at conferences, podcasts, and educational events across the concussion and rehabilitation space. Outside the clinic and research world, Melissa enjoys hiking, mountain climbing, spending time with family, and hanging out with her 3-legged cat named Brainiac. So with that, let's hand it over to Melissa. So excited to share today's interview with all of you. Thanks for being here. I am so excited to welcome Melissa back to Hope Survives podcast. If you've been listening from the beginning, you may have heard Melissa you've done 2 episodes with me, right? I think this might be
Yes.
your 3rd. Yeah, this is your 3rd. So welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm super excited to be here and chat today.
I'm so glad to have you with us here in season 5 of Hope Survives podcast. And today we're going to be talking about concussion phenotypes, which I'm really excited to hear some of your research and the things that you have been doing in your practice. I also want you to share about the brain toolkit, which we can get to in a little bit. But to start off, can you catch us up? I know you were in the throes of your studies last time with your PhD, correct? So how's all
Yes.
that going? Share a little bit and introduce yourself for those who have not met you yet.
Yes. So, well, I'm Melissa Biscardi. I am a registered nurse and a manual osteopath. I'm in Canada, so here osteopaths are more like physiotherapists versus in the US, they're doctors of medicine. And I have a clinical practice that focuses on concussion and also research I've been doing that focuses on concussion. So literally 14 minutes ago or so, I submitted the final revision for my PhD. So that's super exciting.
Oh my goodness, what a big
Yes,
day. Thank you
I
for
know, it's
celebrating
such a big
with
day.
us.
It's so great to be here celebrating. Yes, and then the creator of the Brain Toolkit, which is a little app that can be used for concussion assessment and rehab. So basically, my life is all around concussion prevention, recovery, resilience.
All the most beautiful things.
Right? Yes.
Yes, what we love here at Hope Survives. I mean, it's what we're all about as well. So I would love to get right into it. Can you share
Absolutely.
what are the concussion phenotypes and why should we care?
Yes, absolutely. So the concussion phenotypes, they're a way of essentially organizing assessment and care based on how a concussion prevents or presents. And we know that every concussion is different. Even 2 concussions in the same individual will present differently. And the phenotypes, not everyone agrees on them, but for the most part, there's overlap, and they are the cognitive phenotype. So when someone is presenting more with brain fog, slow thinking, issues with memory, word finding, or cognitive intolerance, which means when you're doing cognitive work, you will get a symptom like headache, nausea, dizziness. Then there's the ocular motor phenotype, which is my focus quite a bit, and that has to do with eye movements. And it might present as blurry vision, trouble with close work. That can also present with nausea, dizziness. So there is overlap in how they present, which is why the assessment is helpful, someone else looking in at what's going on. Then vestibular phenotype. Sometimes that's when a crystal in the ear has been dislodged, but that's not the only cause. It can also be that you have balance issues unrelated to that. Dizziness comes up over and over again. And then the cervical phenotype, which is when the symptoms are primarily being driven from the neck. That can be neck pain and headaches, but the neck can also contribute to blurry vision and nausea. So the symptoms often can be confusing because they can be coming from a lot of different places. And there's the mood phenotype, which is completely understandable because a concussion throws your life upside down. So that can manifest as sadness, and it can also manifest as anger, irritability, anxiety. And how much did I miss one? Oh, another one has to do with exercise. Basically, cardiovascular capacity, often after concussion, can be hard for people to exercise. They just don't have the tolerance, and it causes a variety of symptoms. And then sleep is given its own category, which makes sense because sleep can totally influence your recovery. And headache is also given its own category, but what I find is usually it's one of the other phenotypes that are contributing to the headaches. But there they are in a nutshell. And you can have one phenotype, you can have them all. You can have one phenotype at a certain part of your recovery and then later on another phenotype. So it's not black and white. Definitely is sort of an ebb and flow over the recovery timeline.
So if someone's never heard the word phenotype, like what does that actually mean? Like break down, like why is it just not say concussion type? What does the word phenotype mean?
Right.
I'm just
And now,
curious.
you're absolutely bang on because phenotype is a little bit of a catchy word. Often a more accessible word to use would be subtype, or
Okay.
I don't know if you've had Dr. Mark Hessig on here, but he will say buckets. And I think one of the studies even used the term like buckets of symptoms, buckets of assessment findings. A phenotype is like, for example, diabetes, right? You have a blood test that gives you the data and categorizes you into this diagnosis. So it is about, okay, meeting a certain number of criteria and then organizing you into a category.
Okay, so it's categorization of the type
Yes.
of concussion and the way that it manifests because as we all know, concussion is very complex and you can't see it on the outside, and a lot of people get frustrated, they get misdiagnosed, they get discouraged, they can't find the right treatments, they feel overwhelmed. For those who are listening and maybe fall into one of those categories, how could understanding the concussion phenotype help their recovery?
Absolutely. So even just listening to those little descriptions, thinking about, okay, I gave a couple examples. Where do they fall in terms of those examples? I know you had definitely the oculomotor phenotype in one of your concussions because I heard you sharing about your experience with Dr. Schmoe. But let's say, yes, someone is having blurry vision, trouble with close work like reading, even nausea, and thinking, okay, I feel like my eyes are off, but I'm not quite sure. And definitely finding a concussion clinician. I'm a real stickler on that because, and as you've experienced, when you have a concussion, they're complex. So seeing someone who's working with them all day, every day is really going to help you, the patient, because they will be able to pick up on the nuance. The other thing about the phenotypes, if you think of all the different presentations, what you're feeling, you're not crazy, right? So just knowing that a concussion can manifest in so many different ways, because I just listed basically 7 different systems that can be disrupted. So even just acknowledging that, yes, okay, something is off. I know there's something is off, and then having someone assess it.
So, because you can't see it on the outside, it's like a lot of times you do just feel off. And I mean, when I'm thinking about the list, and I have it in front of me here that I'm looking at from a post that you have on your Instagram, which super helpful stuff that you're posting there. But I pulled that up there. You have it pinned on your page, which was easy. And I'm looking at these: the cognitive, the vestibular, the ocular, the
Yes.
headache, the cervical, the autonomic, and the mood. And I'm thinking like think I had pretty much all of those at one point in my journey. So it's, I guess, how do you figure out which is the most important to deal with if you feel like you have multiple?
Yeah, that's a great question. And there's a method to the madness. So our body needs to feel safe first and foremost before we can throw any sort of rehab at it. So usually when people come into my office, one is ensuring they have some support, whether it's family, whether it's external help, like a psychologist, clinical social worker, to help them work through the trauma, big or small, right? Your life has been thrown upside down. And then resources like yoga, journaling, meditation, I think walking in nature, all of those are super essential for foundation. And then we know aerobic exercise is kind of the next layer that comes in to support the nervous system, but that also supports mood and also supports sleep, because in order to sleep, we need to collect a sleep drive over the course of the day. And I think that's something that is often forgotten. Like if you're not doing anything all day, that's also going to make you stay up all night. So layering those in, nutrition for sure, the fuel that you're having is important for recovery. And then starting to think about the neck, and then ocular, motor, vestibular, and then cognitive comes after. Because if you think, if you're not sleeping, if you're in pain, if your eyes aren't working as well as we would like, there's no battery left for cognitive, right? So the layering approach really matters. And it's not that they're separate, but it's just how we put them together, and also being mindful of the battery of the person in front of us that we're working with, and having them be a part of the recovery plan.
That's a super important distinction, that cognitive could come after some of those, because when you think about memory and focus and the other things that come under that cognitive category or phenotype that you would say, those can be some of the more obvious ones when you're trying to work or
Yes.
do school or even just housework tasks, or you're trying to like communicate. At Hope Survives, we have a couples group, and it's for couples that are navigating brain injury together. And over and over and over
Yes.
again, we're talking about communication and we're talking about memory. And the partner with the brain injury often will share, like, I don't mean to not, remember this or not follow through on this. And then, the other partner will talk about like the challenges of learning how to communicate with somebody after the injury. And when I think about that, we talk a lot about, coping strategies or communication strategies for the cognitive side. But I think it's tempting to want to address all of that first and not realize that, well, maybe there's something off with your neck or your eyes or your autonomic system that's contributing to why your cognitive load is so heavy and why you can't do those things.
Yes, absolutely. And also, I love that you have a couples group, because a brain injury, as you know, it's not really an individual
Hmm.
injury. There's a person at the center, and then there's a ripple effect on the
Yeah.
family. And it's really interesting because I had a patient, and as she recovered, she said the she said something to the effect of the mood or the energy in the house overall is a lot better now. And yes, it just got me thinking. It's true. Like when you're helping someone recover, whether if you're a clinician or their friend or partner, is you're really having a ripple effect on all of the people in their life. And I just love thinking about that.
I mean, that's
And I'm
the
sure you
mission and vision
experience
statement.
similar.
Yeah. Well, and when you first connected with me is when I was doing Hope After Head Injury and before I started the nonprofit. But the mission and vision statement of the nonprofit is about the family. Like it's so important, and this is a whole support system. And so, it does affect everyone. And so you might be listening to this right now for your loved one and thinking, how can I identify? So, Melissa, what tips would you give to those who are caregivers, friends, family members? What tips would you give for them to learn how to identify maybe what the importance of the phenotypes and figure out which part maybe should be addressed
Yes.
first?
I think one thing is definitely having patience with the individual, even in terms of mood. So after concussion, you're more likely to have irritability or anger outbursts, or be short, or just not be able to do as much as before. So as the friend or the family member, really recognizing that, either giving a little bit of, what would you call it? Maybe empathy or compassion. If someone snaps at you, knowing that that's not the real them, right? Or there might be a reason for that, and that is that their battery is empty. So, for example, you on your best days, but let's say I said, okay, Cristabelle, we're going to go shopping, and then we're going to go to a movie, and then we're going to go to dinner. You would not feel great at the end of the night.
Mm-mm.
So everyone has a certain point their battery is going to be empty. And after a concussion, it's just a lot sooner. So definitely compassion and empathy. And then now that we talked about the phenotypes a little bit, knowing that, okay, maybe there's something else driving the symptom, right? So maybe they're saying they have nausea, but actually that might be from the eye's not working quite as well as they could. So maybe we're going to hang out in a non-visually stimulating environment. And that's also going to help with the battery. I don't know if
Yeah.
that's helpful actually, but
No,
I think it is, right?
I think it's helpful. And I think understanding the autonomic system and what you said at the beginning was if you don't feel safe, you're not ready for rehab. And so maybe even starting with how can we ground and get this autonomic system or work on some of that side of things, right? Like what are some tips you would give for people that maybe they're if they had the person with the injury is feeling on edge a lot, how would you help them to even be ready for concussion rehab?
Yes. So definitely movement is important. And I understand not everyone has an exercise bike, or they might even be uncomfortable going outside because of the sounds and all of the visual stimuli. So sometimes I'll tell people to just start with 1 minute of marching first thing in the morning. Why? Because you have a little bit of movement. Actually, I've had a patient start with maybe 5 or 10 seconds. He had very little tolerance, but that adds up over time. So let's say between 5 seconds and 1 minute of marching in the morning, that gets the blood flow going, the blood flow to the brain, maybe a little bit of endorphins. So you can even start super, super slow in terms of movement. And then whatever resonates with the person in terms of a mindfulness activity, for sure, whether it's coloring, whether it's listening to a podcast, guided meditation, deep breathing. There are so many different ways to sort of support the nervous system, and some mental health support, whether it's a friend that you trust, family member, professional. And I think those are really key to then maybe get some of the anxiety down and the anxiety around rehab, and then take the next step. Because it is a big step to go into rehab and trust a professional, with something that is so complex. And, usually we don't even really understand what's going on in our brain because we're injured, right? So we're having the experience.
Yeah,
What
that's
kind
so
of things do
helpful.
you use or were your favorite to kind of get your system settled? Like, what did you do before you went to see Dr. Schmoe?
That's such a good question. I think I have just had so many ups and downs and just struggling that a lot of times, to be honest, Melissa, I was not doing it. And
That's
I was
okay. No
not
judgment
moving
here.
enough. I was not because I I would feel so tired all the time and it would be really hard. And so I'm in a new season now. I'm working on it. So what I'm actually doing now is when I was a little girl, I took dance lessons like ballet and like I took dance growing up. And so I haven't told anybody this actually, but I started putting on a song that I love in the morning and just like dancing. I'm not coordinated. I
Mm,
don't feel like I can dance the way I used to. But even just doing like some simple, like some of the old ballet moves I remember as a kid, in my room by myself I usually listen to worship music, and like just doing like a dance. So I started doing that as my intentional movement and it makes me feel so much better.
I love this because this is a huge theme in my clinical practice right now, is getting people to dance. It's so good. It's so good for movement coordination. One patient came in on the weekend and she said, "Oh yeah, I started to do ballet." And even her posture is better. And same with you, she's just getting the hang of it. But I think dancing is just great. It's movement, helps your endorphins, your mood, and it's varied. So that's one thing I don't
Mhm.
love about a treadmill or stationary bike, even walking in the city. You're just walking on one level. So I love dancing, and you can dance when it's freezing cold outside. So I love it.
Mhm. Yeah. Thank you for asking that. That was interesting. I want to ask you, you mentioned nutrition as being important. And one of the previous podcast episodes I had you on, you were talking about hormones and especially particularly female hormones, but both male and female hormones can be affected by concussion. Now, you did not mention hormones in the phenotypes. So how does that play into all of this? And the
I know it's
metabolic stuff
interesting.
kind of.
I like to consider the nutrition piece or inflammation as a phenotype, even if other people don't, but it's a huge factor, the fuel we're putting in. And not everyone has the same knowledge around nutrition, right? So some
Mhm.
individuals have certain habits and others other habits, and all the extremes. We need hydration. See, it's the low hanging fruit, right? The hydration, because what we want to do really is eliminate other things that might be making you feel unwell. So if we're dehydrated, we are going to have brain fog, slow thinking, be tired, get headaches. So we want hydration. And often I will have or suggest people put a pinch of sea salt in their water, and that just kind of tricks the system to holding on to the water a little bit more. And then fruits and vegetables, no fried foods, no alcohol, um, no cookies or anything sweet, especially in the beginning. Like sugar's inflammatory, fried foods are inflammatory.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, gluten, I say to people, focus on rice and sourdough bread, but the other sort of pastas and breads, try and limit them, especially in the beginning. Even if you're not gluten intolerant, most people feel better just by cleaning up some of those pieces. And let's say you were coming into my office, I ask people to do it for 2 weeks. Like, just give me 2 weeks on a little, because you can't change people's lives, right? It's not reasonable, but okay, let's do this for 2 weeks. See if you feel better. See if your body responds. And usually people do. And then it also gives your body a little bit of bandwidth to work on the other
Mm,
things.
that makes sense.
And then with the hormones are super interesting. They can be disrupted after a head injury in the early stages or in the late stages, even if they haven't been disrupted early on. So for women, things to look out for are changes in periods, missed period, extra period. Usually there's more PMS. And often this is just going to stabilize over time, but just so you know what's going on in your body, yes, it's probably the concussion that's disrupting you. What else happens? Sometimes women will actually get pushed into menopause if they have a head injury near menopause. And for males, the easiest thing to notice is that there's no morning erection. And usually a male's going to notice that and bring it up to their healthcare provider. But with differences in females, it's a little bit more subtle, right? Like, am I more PMSy? Did I get, my period a little earlier? And it absolutely can be happening. I would mention it to your concussion clinician. A medical doctor
Mhm.
won't always pick up on that nuance. Do you know what I mean? Like, they're looking for
Yeah, for
huge
sure.
changes. But when we're talking about like optimization, getting you back to an optimal state, it's your concussion clinician who
Yeah.
who can probably support that.
That's great. And we have a whole episode we did a couple years ago
Yes, yes,
regarding
yes.
hormones, and I will link that in the description below.
Okay,
But
amazing.
yeah, so Melissa, this has been really, really wonderful. And I know that there's so much more we could go into. But to close
Next
today,
time.
I would love to, yes, I'd love to have you back. But to close today, I would love to ask you, what are your final words of hope for our listeners?
Oh, yes. So, and of course, the podcast is named after it. And that is that there is always hope. The brain, the body was designed that way, right? For healing, for adapting. And sometimes you need a little adjustment in your approach, maybe a big adjustment. And don't be afraid to change clinicians, right? Because sometimes people can only take you so far. And then you need to switch it up and someone else will take you to the next level. So definitely doing what's right for you because there is always hope. And yeah,
I love that.
that's
Thank you.
the bottom line.
Yeah. Thank you so much. So if people want to get in touch with you, your Instagram is concussionrehab.ca, and that's your website as well, correct?
Yes. So
And you
easy.
practice in Toronto for
Yes.
those listening. So if you're looking for someone in Toronto, make sure to reach out to her. Thank you so much for being here and for sharing. And I look forward to hopefully having you back again soon.
Yes, that would be so great. And I just wanted to say one more thing. Sorry. So I mentioned the hormones And if you are experiencing some things that you think are hormonal, the holistic approach can really be helpful. I know not acupuncture isn't as accessible everywhere in the States, but those alternative methods often they can help just support the body's recalibration. So if you're having issues that maybe someone is not able to help you with, don't be afraid to explore, because there is someone out there that can help you, that is made for what you're experiencing.
I love
And
that.
also if you're a family member, just knowing that, okay, actually there's someone out there that can help my spouse, my sister, my brother, my friend.
And the research has come so far, and it's just going to continue to keep getting
Yes.
better. There's going to continue to be more and more practitioners that are concussion literate. And so we always say that there's hope, and keep searching, right? So thank you so much, Melissa.
My pleasure.
If you enjoyed today's podcast, we would love if you would consider leaving us a rating or a review. We are so grateful to be able to provide this support for the brain injury community. And if you would like to get connected, please visit hopesurvives.org.